And we are live. Welcome to Oz Property Investors. Hello, everyone. What do we do, Jeff? We have the big names and we have the big fun.
Yeah, big fun.
That's what we do.
Not correct grammar, but we'll let Jeff slide with that.
Yeah, don't come to us for where to put a comma in a sentence. This one's going to be a bit of a fun one. How are you, John? Nice to see you.
You too. Yeah, I'm doing all right. You know, it's nice to be on the chat with you guys. First time I've ever had to do something like this, so it's a little nervous, but very exciting as well.
Yeah, hopefully it's we're not too bad. We're pretty easy to deal with. What about you, Steve? How are you, mate?
Yeah, I'm really good. Busy up to lead the Christmas, same as you are, Joe. I imagine Christmas is since COVID. It's not the usual. It was die off before then because everyone's from the habit of working from home. So
yeah,
work per usual with everyone, even the agents, which is surprising.
Yeah. I'm seeing a lot of pressure. Like everyone creates this. Oh, I've got to buy the property before Christmas, which is perfect when you're a buyer because it allows a little bit extra pressure on the vendor side of things, which helps you negotiate the deal. But tonight we've got something a little bit different. So we are doing something called the Property Software Showcase. And this is where we get on. So Steve, you actually found GapMaps and the technology. So what we're doing is doing a bit of a walkthrough with all these cool softwares that not everyone sees and not everyone necessarily knows a lot about, and just putting it out there to the community. And if there's value there, then you guys can soak it up. But Steve, what kind of drew you to GapMaps?
I can't even remember how I came across John, but I just saw GapMaps, and like for a company that's been around for about 10 years, I hadn't even heard of it. I was, what is it here? And then had a meeting with Johnny. He ran me through the software for about an hour and a half, and it had some really cool value. And it's just one of those ones where it is a little bit pricey, but the everyday investor's not going to have access to it. So I thought it'd be good for this, and that's why I introduced him to you and Jeff, being like, look, let's show people what's actually out there. And they don't have to use it, but it'll be a good awareness of at least what the slightly bigger dogs in the industry are using.
Yeah, it's crazy how deep you can go with some of this data stuff, but it also helps if you are if you're not going to use the platform, it will help kind of give you some crystallization around what data is actually important and what things you should be high level thinking about and looking at when making a decision around what is a hot spot and what is a not spot as well. What I thought we'd do is go around. We've got our quote of the week. John, what is your quote of the week, mate?
Right. So my quote of the week is from John Lennon, and life is what happens while you're busy making other plans. Right. And that's certainly something that can apply to everyone, especially I would imagine in the property developer space. Right. You've got all these things lined up, and then something happens, and you have to pivot. You have to make changes. Your world can be completely shifted by one action that you didn't take into account. So that was kind of, I thought that was quite relevant and a good one.
Yeah, I love it. Well said. Well said, Johnny. Both Johns. Both you and John Lennon. What about you, Steve, mate? What is your quote of the week?
As you know, and some of the Oz Pop guys know, I used to be a design engineer. So I follow a few of those kind of mechatronic guys online. So I saw this one a few weeks ago. It's usability strength is identifying problems, while design strength is identifying solutions. So I'll read that again. Usability strength is identifying problems, while design strength is identifying solutions. And the guy was Alan Cooper who said that. So I thought that was a little bit fitting today because we're talking about software and programming and what we're actually how beneficial we can be for users versus what the actual problem is.
Love it. Okay. Interesting. My quote of the week, I had it. I was on the phone with a real estate agent today, and I was like, hey, he said, I screwed it up. I had it before I joined this session, but it was like, we were talking about wants and needs. I'm like, I really need to kind of see this property. He's like, do you want to see the property or do you need to see the property? And I think it was a need is only an amplified want. So it's how much do you want it? It then becomes a need. But I messed the quote up, so ignore my quote of the week today. Yeah, exactly. Cut that one out. Now, what we're going to do before we introduce who this wonderful gentleman is, we're going to jump into our sponsored posts. And I also want to have a bit of a around the ground, Steve, on what's going on in the commercial space, because it's been some interesting times. There's been some interest rate movings. We haven't spoken to you in a couple of months now about commercial. So it'd be cool to unpack that as well, if you're cool with that.
Well, sounds good.
Let's do it. Okay, let's jump in. The amazing thing with commercial property investing is that in most cases it's cash flow positive from day one, which means that you can drive those profits towards paying down the debt. There are instances with commercial property investing where you can actually have the property pay itself off over 10 years, which is absolutely crazy. With commercial property, you get massive net yields, so you can expect anywhere between 6 to 10%. And as we've seen in the current boom, these properties not only provide large cash flow, they do certainly grow wildly in value too. Now, with big rewards comes some risk, and this is why you should de-risk your investment as much as possible. And the way you do that is with expert due diligence. And this is why we highly recommend people hire professionals to help you along in your investing journey. Steve Polisi of Polisi Property is one such expert. Being a chartered mechanical and structural engineer in a past life, Steve draws on his analytical and mathematical skills to do that expert due diligence for you. With 6 years experience in the space, Steve has over 1,200 property transactions under his belt. He's the guy you want in your corner, crunching the numbers and finding the best properties in the best locations, along with ensuring that you avoid the mistakes. Steve has actually even written the book on commercial property investing in Australia, and not only is it a bestseller, I believe it to be the most comprehensive in commercial property investing on the market today. He's been generous enough to give us a massive discount for our audience of 50%. So use the code OZPROP, click the link below, get a copy today, and start learning and getting on your commercial property investing journey. Oh, there you go. Commercial property investing journey.
Actually, 100% off the book this month. I've left it open for 100% off if you use OzProp. So go nuts, guys.
Oh, is it? It's not 50% off, 100% off OzProp.
Bro, Christmas specials. Get on it.
So good. It's a bit hard to hear. It's a little bit hard to hear you, Steve. You might kind of far away.
All right now, all good?
Yep.
Yeah, a little bit better. Okay, awesome. So, yeah, give us a bit of a rundown, Steve. What is going on in the commercial property world nowadays?
All right, so similar to residential, there's obviously a weird sentiment in the market where sellers are trying to sell 6 months prices ago, buyers are trying to buy in 6 months' time. So we have seen a little bit of softening because there are less kind of buyers, but there are less sellers as well. So that's what's keeping kind of prices strong. So in general, there's been about a 0.2% cap rate reduction. So a little bit of a price drop. You're just negotiating slightly better deals. However, like there's more to it than that. Like I remember I was watching last week where PK was talking about how commercial has to go down as interest rates go up. And the premise of that is correct. Like most, you value commercial based on like the return that you get. However, if that was the case, how come in the last 3 years, as we've had rising interest rates, cap rates have come down, the prices have tightened? So it's not, there's more to it than that. There's obviously a supply and demand and things like that. However, with that argument, the higher interest rates go, the more resi investors switch to commercial, because where they've got a neutral or negatively geared residential going really negative, you've got a positively geared commercial going slightly positive. So which one is then considered kind of lower risk? However, I also think like, especially coming into next year, so many more investors are switched on with commercial now. It's no longer just a high net worth game. Like I've just personally sold like 5,000 books. So that 5 years ago, if I mentioned to someone commercial, they were just kind of like, no, too risky kind of thing. So I think we're going to have a huge influx, which will keep kind of prices high. There will be a softening, obviously, depending on what interest rates do. But at the moment, there's some good buying. But as I always tell clients, just buy when you're ready. Like as soon as you're ready and you're comfortable and you're educated, that's the right time to buy. Like how many people do you know at the start of COVID said Sydney and Melbourne was going to grow by 30%? Like no one. So no one's got a crystal ball. Buy when you're ready and buy in the market that you're in. Buy well in the market you're in, and long term you'll be right. So have that 10-year mindset and you'll be okay.
Yeah, it's 100% the right way to think about it as well. I see this all the time. I've got people that I'm working with, and they're like, "Yeah, should I buy now, or wait for this crazy crash that is this impending doom that is happening?" And that's what they were saying 6 months ago, and that's what they'll say in the next 6 months, and the next 6 months, and then they'll be ready to buy. But then something will happen. You'll lose your job. You'll have to go on maternity leave, and all of a sudden it changes your borrowing ability of what you could borrow. So as interest rates do rise, it does make borrowing capacity. It does make your borrowing. It used to be, you could borrow, if you could borrow $500,000 6 months ago, you now no longer can borrow 500,000. It's probably more like 430, 450 around there. So, if you can get into the market with something and you're ready to rock and roll with it, you're good to go.
Yeah, you get a lot of buyers like, oh, I'm going to sit on my cash for 6 months. But I can tell you, like, I do sales calls all day, every day. Everyone is thinking that. So thinking that you're going to jump in 20 minutes before them is pretty damn slim. And then the other point is the market's not a bouncy ball. It doesn't drop to the bottom and then bounce straight back up. You could be buying in a year's time and it be, 10% discounted. It could stay at that price for 5 years. So what have you actually achieved? You've saved a little bit. You've just saved yourself that 10% growth in 5 years' time. So yeah, for me, like just buy when you're ready. I've literally chatted to thousands of investors now. Not one has been able to pick the market consistently. Not one. So if the experts aren't doing it, don't think you're going to outsmart them.
Too true. Okay, well, let's introduce this man that we have here, John Goya of GapMaps. Now, I'm not really going to do much of an introduction to you and GapMaps, John, because you've got a bit of an introduction for us. So do you want to share your screen and give us a bit of a run through of who you are and what GapMaps is and why Steve and I are very excited about this platform?
Sure. So again, thank you, Steve and Joe, again for allowing me to come on and present. I'm just going to get my screen.
While you're doing that, I'll just mention. So we also run this as a podcast. So if you don't join the podcast, then do that now. But if you are listening to this on the podcast, this is probably more of a YouTube or a Facebook Live one. It's going to be a very visual. We're going through software and platforms, and there's going to be a lot of demos. So let's do it. What do we got here, John?
Great. So first, bit of introduction to me. My name is John Goya. As you can tell, I am not from Australia. I grew up in the US, but I've lived in different parts of the US. I lived in London for 10 years, and I've been in Australia for close to 4. I am not a property expert, but what I am is I'm more of a technology expert. And I have spent the last 15 years working with different companies, helping them use technology to help them do their jobs more effectively and more efficiently. I've been with GapMaps for about 2 years now, and I will give you a bit of an introduction into GapMaps, and then we'll kind of jump right into the demonstration. Before I do that, just to give you a bit of context, GapMaps work with a lot of different property developers of different sizes, but we also work with a lot of commercial groups like fast food and childcare and the like. And I don't need to tell the people on this call that, a lot of the decisions that are made with property have to do with location. So the more data and the better, more accurate data you have access to, the better you can do your job, the better investment you can consider, right? Things like demographics. Is the area growing? What does the competition look like if you're looking at commercial? Like, what are the amenities? What are the schools? What are the hospitals? Things like that. Are there any pending developments in the area? So having access to this type of data is really important to help you with your decision-making process. A lot of people who don't have access to GapMaps rely on Google, which is not usually your best friend because you might have to go to quite a few different websites to access a lot of this information. Sometimes the websites don't cover all the information you need, and then you've got to bring it all together. Right, so that's where GapMaps kind of comes into play. So what is GapMaps? I'm not going to kind of go through this whole slide, but essentially what GapMaps is, it's a mapping solution that brings together a lot of different sources of data together quickly and efficiently to help you make decisions. So what type of data? Things like demographics, points of interest. We've built some supply and demand metrics for certain industries. We also have development approval data. We have some traffic data and things like that to help throughout that process. In terms of the type of demographics, things like population projections, your standard demographics, age, income, number of households, the type of workers that live in the area. A lot of that we pre-build into the system, so you don't have to go looking for it. And from a commercial perspective, we work across a lot of different sectors, things like childcare, aged care, fuel, auto tires and servicing and the like. Because at the end of the day, we're providing data, and a lot of different businesses can use the same data to make decisions. It just depends on what they're looking for in that respect. So with that, Joe and Steve, did you have any questions about that before I jump right into the platform?
No, I've seen it before. It's awesome work. Basically, my understanding is you've accumulated lots of data points into a really user-friendly software system where you're not going to 1,000 websites and pulling data from everywhere manually. It's just all in one place. You can look at it. You can analyze lots of areas really quickly or hone in on certain areas, and you'll go through it in a sec, I believe.
Correct. So look, obviously, this is a map of Australia. And the way that this system works is there's a couple of things, right? So this left-hand navigation turns things on, or we could do a search. So Steve or Joe, is there an area that you guys want to look at that we can use as a live example while we're going through this?
I imagine probably we've got most watchers in Sydney or Melbourne, so maybe an area in there. But let's go my hood, Parramatta, Western Sydney.
Parramatta. Okay, so I'll just pick any spot in Parramatta. But in reality, with this system, you can type in a specific address, you can type in a suburb or a postcode, you can just drop a pin in the middle of a map. So let's say this is a site that we want to evaluate. First thing I'm going to do, just to keep track of it, I'm just going to save it so that we can always come back to it. Okay, so here's my pin. I've got to turn it back on, and that will come back. Okay, there we go. So this catchment section is where you can get a lot of information really quickly. And with this catchment section, you can do really 3 key things that are going to speed up all of the analysis you need to do. First of all, when you're looking at a site and you want to get the demographics or understand the area, you need to create a catchment or a trade area. So we give you lots of different ways to do that. Just to show you 2, you can do a radius. So if I wanted, this is a 3-kilometer radius, but if I wanted to change this to maybe a 5-kilometer radius, we make it easy to do that, right? Another thing that you can do, which is also very handy, not as much for Parramatta, but if you're kind of closer to the water or you're near a lot of national parks, is a travel time. So what the travel time will allow you to do is, so let's say instead of a 5-minute drive time, what does a 10-minute drive time look like? I can very quickly create a drive time based on time of day and day of week. And when I click process, I've clicked it already, it's going to create a 10-minute drive time. So you can start to see the difference in terms of how far people can travel versus as the crow flies, right? Like a straight radius, right? There's a couple of other ways.
Yeah, I really like that, John, because like that's especially when people are looking for owner-occupied houses, going, okay, I don't want to travel any more than 40 minutes to work. You can then look at areas where you think a suburb might not be kind of developed yet, but if you're within that kind of 40 minutes and they've got to work 2 or 3 days a week in a major hub, whether it be like Penrith here or Parramatta or the CBD, you can then get a preview of, okay, these are the suburbs I want to look at and do more further research on because they are within a vicinity of a major CBD.
Right, exactly, right. And look, these are kind of the 2 key ways that people create catchments. There is another way as well. So if you actually wanted to build it based on specific suburbs or postcodes, that's 2021, I could actually select specific suburbs and postcodes, right? This is really useful if you happen to be working with, groups like franchise businesses who need to have defined territories. You can build a catchment based specifically on that, right? I'll just pick a couple, right? But at the end of the day, all I've done so far is I've drawn a bunch of lines, right? But these lines can extract a lot of information. So if I wanted to get a full demographic report on this 10-minute drive time, with GapMaps, all you have to do is click this report button. Now, this will take 20 to 25 seconds to load. If I'm lucky, it'll be shorter. The reason why it takes so long is because it's like 17 pages long. And with the reason why we have it so long is because there's a lot of data available. Not everyone is going to need all of it, but you need to, as long as you know what you're looking for, we make it easy to find. So I'll go through just a couple of these categories. So we start with a snapshot. And this data is hyper accurate to the shape that we've created. So we break down the boundaries to what's called a mesh block level, which is about 30 to 60 households. So if it's within this boundary, it's as accurate as we can possibly make it. Okay, so if we're looking at this, we can see within that 10-minute drive time, there's a population of just under 161,000 people. You can see the percentage of age, the average age, the number of households, the income level, birthplace, housing, etc. So this is just a snapshot. After that, it gets a lot more granular, and a lot of it depends on what you're looking for. One of the first things that we have is population projections, right? It's one thing to know what the population is like today, but what's it going to be like in 5 years or 10 years? And again, it's based on this specific shape. So you can see that we're going to go from 161 or 2,000 to 210,000 in the next 10 years. And a lot of that is based on data like building approvals and data that we get from state governments that kind of based on growth corridors and things like that.
Yeah, just taking a step back, John. So Joe actually mentioned this maybe 6 months ago, where he was saying like medium house price, for instance, does not mean anything if you're looking like a beachfront location, because beachfront is completely different to 10 minutes back. Using those catchment areas is really powerful when you're looking at stuff like that. If you're looking like a waterfront area, I don't care what the census data shows for average household income and demographics and all that stuff for the whole suburb. If you're looking in that front section near the beach, because that's the data you care about. That's where the household income and the populations and the demographic, that's where you want to pull the data from, which data doesn't do. So that's really powerful here, which most people aren't aware of.
Yeah, because it brings it down to as granular as possible. So if you really only want to focus on that area, you can narrow that down. This report, again, is really long. I'm not going to go through all of it. Some of the key things are we break down population in a lot of different ways, one of which is CIFA, which many people may not have heard of. It's an ABS score, which is essentially a socioeconomic score, right? The idea that birds of a feather flock together. So where I live, just outside of Brisbane, have people of a similar age, similar income, similar lifestyle. And it's an advantaged or disadvantaged score from 1 to 10. So the higher this number, the more advantaged the area. And that gives you an idea of, the type of people that might be living in the area and what you would expect, right? Breaking down the population in a lot of different ways, the change of population. I'm not going to go through all this. What I will do is I'm going to jump to the bottom. And at the bottom, what we've built, and I'll focus on one specifically, is supply and demand. So because there's data outside of demographics that we can source, so things like for childcare, which I know from our property development, we work with a lot of property developers that are looking to get into childcare just because of the growth of the area and the need. What this will tell you is there's a key metric from childcare called the supply and demand ratio, which is the number of childcare age children in an area divided by the number of places available. So what this ratio will tell you is, can an area support another childcare center? And if this number generally is above 3, it means that you're in good shape. If it's below 3, it doesn't mean that it's not a viable location. It means you probably have to ask more questions and do some more digging. Okay. Some of the other stuff that we have here is like the type of land use that's available in the system in that area as well, right? So it was most of it residential, commercial. What's the breakdown? But the key thing with this demographic report, as you would have seen, is how quickly you can access it. Because in reality, all you have to do is type in an address and create your catchment, and that can take up from 0 to 30 seconds. Then you click a button, in another 30 seconds, you've got a full demographic breakdown of an area that you're evaluating. Okay. The other thing that you can do, and Joe, I don't think we would have spoken about this before. I don't think we had time for it. But what you can do within this area is, let's say you're looking at this for commercial perspective, and you want to know what type of, and we'll just stay with childcare, what type of childcare, how many childcare operators are in this 10-minute drive time? If I do an export, I can select, show me all the long daycare in that area. I can click export, and this will take a minute to get to me, but what's going to happen is I'm going to get an email, and I'm going to move my email over here so I can see it when it comes in. But what the email will tell me is it'll give me a full list of all the childcare operators in this 10-minute drive time. It will give me the address, but it'll also give me a lot of the data that's relevant from a childcare perspective. So how many places, right? How far is it from my particular site? Which is really important to use. In the same thing can be used for fast food, or if you want to know how far a school is from the location, it brings that data up very, very quickly. We're going to visualize that in a couple of minutes as well. So did you guys have any questions about that before I keep going?
No, one of the things I like about that is there's a lot of investors out there that have their like predictions of what they think is going to happen in the future, and they use a lot of that stuff like that. Like we've all heard about like the Bunnings one and the McDonald's one looking there. I know investors that look at other things as well. So they look at childcare centres is one of them. The other one is like amount of gyms in the area, because if it's really densely populated with gyms, it means for them to survive, because they're a low cost kind of asset, it means there has to be lots of need for it, which means it's a healthy lifestyle, it's a growing lifestyle. So you can extrapolate all that and make some theories about what you think might happen over the next 10 years with the property.
That's correct. And the way GapMaps works is when we get to visualizing it, it all works the same way. You just click different buttons. The other thing that I'll touch on in this section that's really useful is this tenant finder report. So let's say you've got a site that you want to, and you think it'd be perfect for fast food, right? But you don't know what brand you should be approaching, right? What this tenant finder report will do is it'll allow you to see, okay, show me all of the fast food that are not within, let's say, a 4-kilometer radius of my specific location. So not near me, but in the general vicinity. So it's not going to overlap with my business. So from a cannibalization perspective, but it's close enough where people will recognize it. So if I do that and I generate this report, this will take a couple of minutes. But what it's going to do is it's going to give me a full list of the fast food brands that we keep track of and how far they are from this particular location, as long as it's outside of 4 kilometers. Right. So that way you'll know from a list perspective, there's no point in going after McDonald's. They're too close. There's no point in going after Hungry Jack's. They're too close. Maybe a GYG because it's 6 kilometers away. Does that make sense?
Yeah. What I'm excited to see is the visualization of some of this population. Like because you've got population density of how many people are there, but then you also have future population growth, and also how many people are actually coming to that area. That's where I was like, oh wow, this is perfect.
So look, we've built in a lot of different layers to help you visualize. So if you're looking at this area and you want to understand, okay, what's the population looking like today at a suburb level? If I turn this on, the darker the red means it's a greater the population by suburb. And this will take a second to reload onto the system. So if I hover over Parramatta, you can start to, it'll give you an overview of the population and it'll give you a few additional details, right? The good thing about the way GapMaps works is these all work exactly the same way. They just answer different questions, right? So if I want to know about population growth rather than the actual population, I can turn this on and say, show me where there's expected to be more people over the next 5 to 10 years. Again, once this pops up, the darker the red, we can look at Parramatta and you can see that in this shape, around 12,000 people today, but by 2031, it's going to close to double.
Yeah.
What we can also do is, what we also have is some data based on population growth, kind of using things like where are the growth corridors or like where are the building approvals. So if I turn on the one for Sydney isn't as good as other states. Like Queensland data is really good, but it kind of shows you the growth corridors in that respect, and it kind of gives you an idea. If I want to give you,
what does it look like? What does it look like in Brisbane? Fly on over up to there and see what the growth corridors are. And this is one thing that I think people get a little bit too excited about when it comes to the growth corridors of some areas. And I think this is probably going to be highlighted in the data. There you go. Yeah, you're typing in Springfield. Is that just because it's called a growth corridor doesn't necessarily means it's a capital growth corridor. It means that there's probably a lot of land supply, and they're looking to put more people somewhere, and they've got to convert that land into housing. So if you have 100,000 people going to an area and there's enough room for 100,000 houses, then there's not really any supply and demand. It's just kind of net neutral. It's when you start to head closer into the city and you can't grow. The demand is, requiring 100,000 houses, and there's only 50,000 that can be made. Then you start getting that pricing pressure. But yeah, what do growth corridors look like on this?
Yeah,
so
Joe,
for Queensland,
that quickly, it doesn't mean you're going to get growth now. That's the thing. A growth corridor, you could be buying there and you're 10 years away from the growth. So now doesn't necessarily mean now's the right time. It's not growth now, but it's showing you that area will grow. So the right time might be 5 years or 8 years or 3 years. So like you said, be careful of oversupply though.
Right. In the way that it works for Queensland, because we get this data from the different councils, like when you hover over it here, like if you remember Sydney, it just said it's a growth area. This will show you, is it residential, how long, and how many dwellings are expected in each area. So it gives you a really good visualization as you start to zoom out like where the pockets of potential development are going to be over the next, 0 to 5 years, 0 to 10 years. Right? We can also bring up layers for things like show me where all the building approvals for houses have been submitted, and this is going to be the first 6 months of the year. So you can start to see where and how many building approvals were submitted in that area.
Can you dig deeper into like SA1 for housing approvals?
No, right now we only have that at an SA2 level.
Cool.
I think we've got a new layer in the demographic report which will show the building approvals. So that would actually be as accurate as the shape that you create. What we have as well is we've got kind of sector-specific data. So things like childcare. So if you're trying to figure out from a macro level, I think childcare will be great, but I need to know where there might be potential opportunity. So if I turn on the supply and demand layer from a childcare perspective, if it's going to let me.
And what's that doing?
So what this is doing is that if you remember that ratio from the demographic report, so the number of children of childcare age to the number of places available. So the darker the red means that there are more children for every one place available for childcare. So the darker the red means the more potential opportunity. So if I'm looking at Springfield,
everyone screenshot that really quickly and go out there and go build a childcare center. Look at that red.
So what this is telling you, well, this dark red doesn't necessarily always mean something because it could be rural and it means that there might be 500 children, but no childcare centers. But if you look at Springfield Lakes, there's only 4 centers in that specific area, and the ratio is 3 to 1. Now, some things to take into consideration if you're looking at childcare is we can actually overlay that with points of interest. So I can actually turn on all the long daycare to see physically where those locations actually are. So it allows you to kind of add context to the shape that you're seeing. So even though this might be yellow and there's a ratio of 3 to 1, if my childcare are going to turn on, I think my internet's slowing up. Yep, there we go. So you can actually see where they are and evaluate them in that respect. But what you can also do is another thing to look at, especially in things like childcare, is it's good to know what pending developments are available. So if I wanted to turn on all the DAs for childcare, I can turn that on in an area as well, so I can see what's being planned potentially for that area. And so if I click on one of these, it's going to tell me what the plans are. So this is a childcare center proposed for next year with 220 places, massive childcare center. So how would that impact the decision making you would have for a potential childcare center in that area? That make sense?
Yeah. And what about some of the areas that are in the red? So like that, was it Chimera?
So with some of these areas, right, a lot of these depend on what's next to it a lot of times, right? So let's look here, right? So you can see this in Mogul area, right? So it's red because there's no childcare centers in this immediate area, but it's surrounded by a couple of blues, which means people in this area probably just take their child to, Bellbowery on the way out, right? So being able to see it in relation to where the centers are in relation to what's around you is really useful. What I would suggest is when you're looking at that, you want to see a combination of colors that aren't blue near you, right? So this whole area will be worth looking at because the closest blue is Richlands and Forestdale. So if you're staying away from there, there could be an opportunity in that respect.
Yeah,
that makes sense?
Is really powerful for me from like a commercial perspective. If I'm looking at like a childcare center for a client, understanding future demand for that childcare center so they're not going to close down in 5 years is really powerful as well.
Right. And look, I mean, the way I'm going to clear the map just to get rid of all the noise, but the way our points of interest work as well is it kind of helps you understand gaps in the network. So let's say we want to start working from a commercial perspective with GYG, right? If you can see where the restaurants are, you can also create a radius around the entire network of any size, so let's say 2 kilometers, to help you figure out where there might be a gap in their network, right? I live up in here in Wynnum, and I've got friends that have been dying to have a GYG here. Now, from a demographics perspective, probably won't work, and it's probably too close to the water, not enough people, but it allows you to see where there might be an opportunity in that network so that you can start trying to work with the appropriate brand. And what's also really good, if you're trying to know what they're doing, if I click on this GYG, I can get a demographic report about them, so I can learn more about them and try to see what they're seeing in the same way that you can do it for your individual sites.
That's awesome. So if you're looking to be a franchise, like own a franchise, it doesn't really matter if you're buying a Five Guys, a Guzman and Gomez, whatever. You just want to make the most amount of money, so you can take full advantage of just say, yep, I'm actually going to put a KFC here, or no, I want to go for a Domino's or a Pizza Hut, and this is going to be the best thing there.
Correct.
You don't have fast food, Joe. You could just be someone who makes Mexican food, a little Mexican restaurant, knowing you're not going to be near like all the other Guzman Gomez, for instance, means you might get a little bit of a stranglehold on that region.
Yeah, and look, I mean, there's a lot of businesses like we work with a couple of businesses where they want to be near McDonald's because they want to be either a healthy alternative, or they want to be a better burger, or they want to do something different. But they know that if there's a McDonald's in an area, people are going to gravitate towards that area just because McDonald's has probably spent a lot of money doing that work, right? But it also there's a lot of logic behind that. But this works across a lot of different industries. I mean, we have things like large format retail or supermarkets, or we also have a whole data set about shopping centers. So if you want to know more about what shopping centers are in the area, how are they performing, that data is able to be pulled up and allowed to evaluate.
Is there like potential shopping centers coming soon? Like DAs?
That's in so this Cordell tool, that's DA data. Like, so it depends on whatever category you want, whether it's supermarkets and shopping centers or residential subdivisions, we can pull that up. I don't have that one turned on in this account, but I could turn on shopping centers, and let's say anything that's new and that's firm or early, and if I click show, it will pull up anything that's categorized as a shopping center or a shop. A lot of times it might end up being mixed use as well, but you can see the details of what's being proposed.
Wow.
Right? I could go, and this is the type of tool very much that you can go really down the rabbit hole. But I think what I want to make sure that I can get across is the way the system works is a lot of the data is preloaded so that people who need access to this data can get to it quickly and effectively. And if they need to start using their data, they have the ability to incorporate that as and when they need it.
Yeah, there's a big thing for me, John, is like you might select one of those suburbs and then I'll have 10 different tabs open for like the council site, the ABS site, this, and you're trying to kind of get it all together in your head. And there's nothing quite like having a visual as opposed to just looking at data. So that actually helps, especially if you're not sure on lots of areas. It means you can just get a good grasp overall. And then once you've chosen the area, you can start digging deeper as well. So for me, it's a huge time saver.
Correct. And look, I mean, there's also a lot of consultants that, like, if you've got a site, they'll do an analysis on that site, but the site's going to be based on one specific shape. Whereas with GapMaps, you can play around with it to make sure you have the right area, you're evaluating enough of the space. I've worked with a property developer in WA where they wanted to position a site that made it look best for them. So we found a shape that made sense, but worked best for them. So a lot of it makes sure that you've got the right area covered to help tell your story in the best way possible.
Love that. Yeah, you were talking. I don't know if we kind of went past it real quick, but it was trying to visualize the areas where there is the supply of properties coming on the market, but there is a whole lot of population. And we did it last week when we were doing like a pre-demo. Is there a site maybe in Brisbane somewhere where there's a lot of population going there, but not enough building approvals? So that is going to give you a pretty good indication around the demand that is coming to the area with the lack of supply. Is there any way we can bring that up? I don't know. It's just on the fly. And if anyone has any question, we've got a number of people on the live right now. If you've got any questions, or if you want to see anything in particular, throw it in there and we can jump to it.
Yeah. So
particular suburb, guys, write a suburb that you're really keen on. We can quickly in the Q&A.
Yeah, actually, it's a great idea.
Yeah, and like what you're trying to see, right? Because I'm happy to. It's fairly quick and efficient, right? So Joe, while we're waiting on that, can you run that by me again, just so I make sure I understand it correctly?
So it would be just the red, like we had an overlay of this area's got a lot of population coming to it, so it's highlighted very clear. A lot of people are coming, but then the supply of new houses being built, there wasn't much going on.
Oh, right. Okay. So,
so new dwellings coming online.
Right. So if we look at population growth, right?
Yeah.
This is the projection. That's based on percentage. Let me turn on the number. And now my internet decides to
Anyone
stop.
throw a suburb out there that you want to look into?
And what data you want from that suburb as well.
Correct. Right. So look, if we look at the red, obviously not surprising, like the Springbank, Red Bank Plains area, Springfield Lakes.
Yeah.
There's a lot of red here, right? So
let's go to
we
Logan.
know
Let's
that.
go to Loganholme in Loganholme in Logan.
Loganholme's a because people always say, "Oh, Logan's a low socioeconomic area, but Loganholme's slightly nicer." So it's always one of the ones that gets collected with Logan, but it's different.
Yeah. It's so I was in Logan not too long ago, getting a boots on the ground, and I've got to say the stigma is unjustified. Now, some places, don't get me wrong, are very justified, but it's much nicer than people give it credit for. Okay.
So this is population growth, right? So this is saying that Loganholme itself is going to have, 2,000 people added in the next 5 to 10 years, right? So not a massive amount of growth.
Not a lot.
If we want to look at the dwelling approvals, right? So let's say I'll just do the total number of, that's 2016 to 2021. So if we're looking here, you can see that there haven't been, just this year, there haven't been that many houses or other dwellings, which is kind of apartments, townhouses, actually proposed or building approval submitted in that respect. So it does allow you to kind of context that. And there is actually a tool, I can't show it today because I had an issue with my account, but you can actually combine a lot of those tools to kind of get more insight. One thing you mentioned, certain areas of Loganholme are good and some aren't. You can actually see that using that CEFA socioeconomic score. So if I turn this on, and this will take a second to load up because it's going in at an SA1 level, but it's going to show you that the darker the red means the more advantaged areas, right? So you can see that there's going to be pockets of oranges and reds with some smaller, like lower socioeconomic areas, and that kind of happens across the board. Now, this hasn't been updated with the 2021 census, but we'll see how that changes next year when it's updated. So I see some names. So if I pull in,
we've got Deebing Heights.
Okay, and
I
so
do
if we go
not
to
know where
Deebing
that
Heights.
One point to note as well, guys, is low socioeconomic area doesn't mean low growth. There's more to it. You need to look at medium house prices and the sale prices, because a low socioeconomic area, let's say the average household income is $65,000 and the house price is $400,000. That potentially could still be a better investment where an area's got an average household income of $90,000, but the average house price is 1.4 mil. So there's actually more room to grow. So there's a little bit more to it than that, guys.
Right.
Yeah. What I think is valuable though is to kind of, like, what I always say is the data it can only get you so far. You do have to jump on a plane and go to the places, but it gives you an opportunity to say, okay, you build a bit of an assumption, you build a bit of a case to say, I believe the best areas from a data perspective, looking visually, looking at the maps that says that this is the best area. And then you go there and confirm or reject that notion and say, you know what, this is a red area for demographic, but it's actually up and coming. There's a lot of nice new developments going on. If I buy here, it may have a better growth potential as well. So for Lemon Tree Passage, they want average income and population growth. Are you building?
Okay, so that was the same user. I wasn't sure. Well, this is for Deebing Heights, so we can do the same for both, right? So I did a 10-minute drive time around Deebing Heights, and you can see it's kind of in a very rural area. So if we're looking at population, it's just under 20,000. We can look at the average income is 110,000, which is about average in that respect, right? And from a population growth perspective, we can see 20,000 today, but it's going to get to 58,000 in the next 10 years. There must be a lot of development in that area, right? We could do the same thing for Lemon Tree Passage. All right, so if I go here again, just to show how quickly you can do this, pull this up. Quick.
I love how that showed like the little time to get places. You could see the roads where they could extend out to. So that's really cool.
This one we'll do a little bit shorter. We'll do an 8-minute drive time on a Thursday at 6 p.m. So when I click process, it's going to obviously, because of the natural boundary of the water, only going to show you the areas where you can get to within 8 minutes. So that if I click on the catchment section and I click demographic report, again, this will take 15 to 20 seconds to pull up. And then we can look at the average income and the population growth. Right now, again, this report is going to be very specific to the area that you select. So the larger the area, the more skewed the data could be, or the more narrow the area, right? So in this case, with that 8-minute drive time, you've got 667,000 people. Average income is 74,000, so fairly low. And then we look at population projections. It doesn't look like it's going to grow very much at all, so fairly flat. If we extended that out, you might get a lot more insight. And again, a lot of that might...
I say, John, that's also expected. So whenever you're surrounded by water, unless they're building up, you're not going to have huge population growth, which can also be scarcity because you own something that they need and demand. And even though in the next 10 years it's not there, that's actually going to build demand. It's actually going to mean days on market shorten and more people want to live there, which is then capital growth.
Right. So there was another one for Kelmscott, WA. Can't spell.
Yeah. So can you look at crime rates and those type of things?
We can, but it's so new that I don't have it on my account yet. Like we literally just got it last week, and I just haven't had a chance to play with it, so I can't.
So the CIFA would be the CIFA rate.
Correct. So the CIFA score would be what we could do is we could look at we could look at the general area. So I'll just do a demographic reporter on a 3-kilometer radius, but then we can pull up the CIFA score for, let's say, at an SA2 level, right? So it's a little bit of a bigger area to start figuring out where there might be pockets of higher and lower socioeconomic advantage and disadvantage. You can see it's fairly low, right?
Yeah, let's go SA1. You get down into the detail.
While that's loading, I'll just go to the demographic report.
That crime rate thing, John, is going to be really, really powerful because, like I said, with the catchment areas, that's really important. Like for instance, like my dad lives in Parramatta, and he lives up on the top of a hill, and they're all $2 million to $4 million houses. You go literally down the hill to the bottom, and there's like council estates and things like that, and crime rate's actually quite high. So just looking at that suburb as a whole, the data is effectively useless because it's like as we always talk about. So that catchment thing is the most powerful thing at the moment.
Yeah, and I would show it if I had it, but I just haven't dug into it yet. But like we can see, kind of, not surprised. Like I don't know enough about this area, but you can see it's fairly consistent with the SA2 level, where this area is lower socioeconomic, but to the left and to the right, higher socioeconomic. Right. So
blue is bad. Like you want to be in red. Is that what you're saying?
If you're targeting higher socioeconomic areas, yes.
Yeah.
Right? Just FYI, Kelmscott is very industrial as well. So there's going to be
correct. So that's another factor you need to take into consideration. That CIFA score will be low if you're in a high commercial or industrial area, and there's just not enough people living in that area. So it's something else to consider.
Awesome. Okay. Is there anything now? I think you have a bit of a special offer or package for the people on the show.
Sure. So, and I can show you that. Look, and like I'm always pretty transparent when I talk about pricing and things like that. And Steve, you're right. It's not the cheapest product in the world. So just to give you an idea of what pricing actually looks like, there's a lot of different.
Do you want to hit present? Or zoom in?
Zoom in.
Yeah, we can't see it.
Oh yeah, present. Yeah, that would make sense, wouldn't it?
We had someone good at software.
Did it work? Yeah, like software, yes. PowerPoint, no. But look, so from a subscription pricing, this is kind of a standard property developer pricing, right? And a lot of it depends on the amount of data you would want and how much coverage you need. So that's kind of why the ranges are so varied. There's more levels, it gets higher and higher. But what we can offer for people who are on this, session today is anyone who wanted access to one of those demographic reports, which I pulled up a couple of times, which would include the demographics, the population growth, things like childcare, whatever you needed. As long as if you send me an email, let me know this radius or the drive time you'd like. It's $250 per report. If you wanted that business export, so you wanted to know, all right, I've got this 10-minute drive time. I want to know where all the schools are, who's there, or all the fast food, things like that. That's $200 per report. Send me an email, just reference the Oz Property Investors, and we'll sort you out. I will, the caveat to that is, if you send me a note after Tuesday, I will be out of the country for a month. So send me an email. I'll pass it on to the appropriate people to get you help to make sure that you're covered in that respect.
Awesome. There's a question here. Does it mean just for a suburb? That's a question that's popped up here. Per report, does it mean for a suburb?
So
maybe dig into that a little bit.
It's per the shape that you want, essentially.
Yep.
So because if you think about it, sometimes if you've got a property and it could be on the border of 4 different suburbs, right? So rather than have just that one suburb, you might want a radius or a drive time or a larger area, and the system automatically collates that data, so you don't have to do it. You give me the shape that you want, and I'll send the report.
Which is far more powerful than just suburb data, because you're tearing it apart to where you can actually get to.
Correct. Like if you're in a really densely populated area, you need more suburbs. If you're in a regional area, that you might only need half a suburb, right, or half a postcode, because it's too big of an area to analyze.
And like I said before, you might want within 30 minutes of a CBD. So you want that kind of catchment area. So that's good value. If you're looking to buy a place and you're about to put an offer on, or the offer's accepted, getting a report like that might just be another little final check of due diligence.
Yeah, 100%. This was been unreal, John. Thank you very much for coming on and sharing that with us. And anyone that wants to take up the report, if you can just pop your email address in the live chat on the Facebook, and then reach out and start doing checking those out. But any other questions?
I have a question. Do I have to go to the Facebook to put the chat?
Just I'll do it. I'll
Fair enough.
sort it out. Okay, hang on. One other question here. Does this work for the sort of new areas that are developing? I'm asking you to place in the Northern Territory as newish area. Would it have all the details, or would it still be collecting?
So it would pull up from a report perspective. It would pull up the demographics that are there today. We would also have the population projections as of what we're expecting, right? So there's going to be lots of projections across a lot of different age groups. So if you had access to the platform, you'd be able to start to see where those are and stuff. But in terms of the offer, from a report perspective, it would give you the demographics as they are today, plus some projections of population growth.
Yeah. Any time there's going to be a lack of data means that area is probably not going to boom in the next 2 or 3 years as well. Like that's a 10, 20-year plan, not a 2-year plan.
That's a great point. Yes. Awesome. John, thank you very much. This is the software showcase. John from GapMaps has been super helpful and shown us through all of that. We now have another software that we're going to run through with Suburbs Finder with Mr. Gilbert Melgar. So we're going to run to our ad, and hopefully this is going to be seamless. John, thank you very much.
Thanks,
where can people learn a little bit more about GapMaps and learn more about you and this platform?
Sure. So obviously you can go to gapmaps.com. That's our website. If you connect with me or follow me on LinkedIn, every week I post different snippets of content about what GapMaps does, some of the data that we provide, and with little videos to show that we do. So that's probably the best way to do it. I'm John Goya on LinkedIn. Pretty easy name to spell. But I think those are the two best ways to keep in touch and to learn more about GapMaps.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thanks, mate.
Bye.
There's nothing worse than going into a situation unprepared, especially when that situation is purchasing one of the most expensive assets of your life against a trained property expert in the form of a real estate agent. It's a scary thought, but it is a skill that can be taught. Do you want to learn how to become fully prepared when buying a property so you can get out there, buy your dream home or investment property without the fear of actually messing it up? Scott Agate, the founder and expert property negotiator at Hello House, has been helping people buy their properties by stepping in and negotiating with the agents and saving his clients tens of thousands, and in some cases hundreds of thousands of dollars. Scott has now decided to share all that he's learned over the past 28 years in real estate so you can go out there and do the exact same thing on how to find a property, analyze that property, negotiate on that property, and transact on it to get the best results. He's created the Get Buyer Ready course, which is a step-by-step guide on how you too can become an expert property negotiator. It's the easy way of how you can avoid all of these agent games and get the best purchase price on that dream home or your investment property. The course is in short bites for busy people with no fluff at all. Just all the information you need to get buyer ready and secure that next property with confidence at the best price. Scott has been kind enough to give our community a massive discount with the link below. Sign up today before you even think about putting an offer on that next property, and it will be one of the best decisions you ever make.
There we go. Okay. Remove that. This is going to be smooth. We're going to add Gilbert. Look at that. First ever software showcase.
I thought there was no chance that was going to work.
Welcome, Gilbert. How are you, mate?
Good, mate. Good. Hi, Steve. Hey, Joe.
How are you doing?
Oh, loving the shirt as well. We're all ready for it. So everyone, this is Gilbert Melgar. He has created an amazing platform called Suburbs Finder. Now, firstly, Gilbert, what is your quote of the week? Or did you not prepare one?
I'd say data is the new oil.
Oh, that's a good one.
That is a good one. Yeah, that's the reason why we're having issues with Medibank. Because they're selling those data.
Medibank is selling our data. Oh God.
No, hackers are hacking Medibank and then selling the data.
Right.
Money.
Okay.
But yeah,
I get you.
We use data every day, so yeah, it helps us make best decisions using those information. So I'd say data is the new oil.
Love that. Yeah, and I think it's more and more we're starting to see this in the property space about how crucial the data is to actually buying an investment grade property. It's wild. So what we're going to do today is something a little bit different with the Suburbs Finder platform, because I actually use Suburbs Finder daily to identify areas, help me drill down on locations and all that good stuff and compare suburbs and locations. So I do have a bit of bias because I do use the platform. But what I wanted to do today, Gilbert, was run through 3 scenarios where we've got 3 different types of people. We've got one person who is 20 years old, single. Their max borrowing capacity, the max purchase price is $450,000, and they are looking for a mixture of both cash flow and growth.
Yep.
Then we're going to go to a double income, no kids. These people only want growth. They're cashed up. They only want growth. That's going to be for $700,000. And then we're going to have a 50-year-old person who's single, who's $500,000, but wants super cash flow. They're thinking rooming houses. They're thinking those type of high cash flow assets. Do you have any questions, Steve, before? No, you haven't said anything yet.
Software, so I'm looking forward to seeing what Gilbert comes up with.
All right.
Okay.
Well, let me share my screen then.
Do it. I was going to ask you to reset Chrome.
Look at the ceiling then, like, where is it?
So there, is it big enough?
Yes. No. It needs to. You need to zoom in at like 4 points. 1, 2.
Yep. Better.
3. No, more.
Go 1 or 2 more. We can always scroll across if need be.
Yep.
1 more. I know it's probably not looking too attractive on your system, but we need to see the goods. Okay, I'm going to get rid of us from here because we need to kind of zoom in here. But what? Yeah, maybe zoom out 1. Yep, perfect.
Yep.
That's
so yeah. So when you log in, actually, so it will present you. So this is the main dashboard. So once you log in, so it will present you 15,000 rows, which is 15,000 suburbs across Australia, and 40 plus sets of data in here. So the platform or the dashboard itself is fully customizable in a sense that you can arrange the data the way that you want it. You can arrange it by just drag and dropping them. So you can pin the columns so that when you slide in, you see all the data in here. Right? And all the columns in here, all the data points can be used as filters. So all the filters now has been grouped. So you can filter by location, so you can filter by supply metrics, you can filter by demand metrics, you can filter by performance change, which is one of my favorite, and demographics. So the demographics, this is the 2021 census data as well, right?
Wow.
So yeah, so and you can just unhide the columns that you don't need. So let's say you can hide the supply metrics. Yep, you can hide that. So what was the question again? What was the budget, Joe?
Yeah. So, well, let's go through the first one. But you've just thrown so many different data points at us. How do you kind of think about, like, how do you kind of drill those down a little bit? And I guess that's kind of what we're going to do here. So let's just do it. A single person, 20 years old, looking for a max purchase price of 450,000, and they're looking for both.
We'll apply the filter 450. Yep. So as we apply the filter, so as you can see in real time, it narrows down the list of suburbs right away, right?
Yep. And then they're looking for both growth and cash flow as well.
Right.
Well, guys, when I'm using this, if I was like looking for a 450K property, on this I might set the median price potentially at 500,000 as well, because sometimes I want to buy below the median house price.
Yep. True. So we'll adjust that to 500. So with a growth of, let's say, 5%, and then the average annual growth over the past 10 years, let's say, between 3 to 7%. Now you're down to 186 list of suburbs, right? So the other thing that we can apply is
well, one thing is I want tenants, so I want to make sure the vacancy rate is quite low.
Yeah, so we can adjust the vacancy rate 3% and below. Right.
I love how fast this is as well. Like, it's just like you get people that sit on realestate.com and they're like, oh, I know this area now. No, you don't. Like, the amount of data points you can get here and then hone in on what have we got now? 173 suburbs. How quickly is just ridiculous.
And then let's say we want a good percentage of owner occupier as well. Let's say we put in around 60% owner occupied. Now you're down to 54. And let's say the population is, at least 10,000 on a suburb level. Right? So if you put 10,000, you only have 3.
Okay.
For the percentage of owner occupier, imagine if you're looking for a high percentage, you wouldn't leave it as 0 to 60. You'd do like 60 to 100, for instance. Is that how it works?
Yeah. Let's say 60 to 100. Yep. So you're down to 46 now with a minimum of 5% population on a suburb level, right? So let's say so you've already selected that, and it's given you, in a matter of seconds or minutes, you're down to 46 from 15,000. So what you want to do now is, let's say here, and then the budget here is, and then you can sort the data from highest to lowest as well. So now you sort it out, and you can see here the yield, the growth, the vacancy rate, And what we can do is we can compare those 5 different areas against each other to see how the numbers stacks up, right? And how did they perform historically. So all we have to do now is just select those 5, any of the 5, right? And then click compare.
Yeah, and this is the crazy thing, because this is what we do as property investors, right? You have to overlay your circumstances. And I think that's why it's so powerful to say, hey, what is your budget and what kind of returns are you actually looking for? Like, if you're looking for super duper cash flow, then maybe these areas are not going to be able to do it, like this one.
Yeah, this is what we have to do as buyers agents. You always get people that go, oh no, you got to buy blue chip or you got to buy cash flow. It depends what the buyer is. Like, what your client's looking for is completely different from one person to the next. Like, yes, buy blue chip, but if you've got a 450K budget, that doesn't help you.
Yeah, true. And different people has their own requirements, right? So that's the reason why I created a platform to cater to different requirements and needs and different goals, right? So here we selected those 5 different properties, and we click compare now.
They all have a 5%. They all have a 5% yield. Their annual growth rate is 3.95. So
the vacancy rate is low, based on market. So this is
Super
the
low.
November 2022 data, because every month the data, new data comes in, usually every first or second week of the month.
Yeah.
So if you notice this one is pretty unique. This is for co-living or rooming house. So median number of people looking for a room to rent, and the number of rooms advertised online, and the median rent for a room.
Yeah.
I've
Same
actually
as-
bought a few duplexes in Bushland Beach as well, so this worked out quite nicely.
So, and we also have the population forecast on the LGA level, or the local council level, where these suburbs belong. So,
That's awesome.
as an investor, you shouldn't only look at the current month's data. You should also look at how did they perform historically. So
Yes.
now in here, you are comparing those 5 areas that you selected against each other, right? So you can compare them by here, median price, and then you can compare them by rent. Seems like all of these 5 areas that we selected has been increasing in rent, right? And then the yield and the vacancy rate. So it's pretty consistent over the past 3 years. The vacancy rate has been below 3%, which is
It's
good.
interesting to see the WA suburb is tracking along nicely with this random suburb in Queensland as well. Like is that?
Well, that's the thing about this, because you won't even know that there are areas, that are performing like this without having a tool.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. Well, no idea.
Like I said, Joe, on the last one with John, is visuals are the most important thing. Like I could put all this data in a big spreadsheet for you over the last 10 years, and
Yeah.
you'll just glaze over. You won't look. But looking at this, like you said, you drew conclusions straight away just by seeing a nice graph.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you have days on market, sale listings, it's been going down as well. Rent, online listing market demand. People, they're looking at the buy section with the intention to buy. Number of people looking for a room. Seems like Annandale in Queensland, there's a lot of people looking to rent a room. So there's an opportunity to do rooming house there. If
That's an
provided by the council.
What'd you say, Steve?
That's a bit of an outlier for the conditions that we've put in.
Yeah. Yeah. But there's a lot of flooding in Annandale, so just be careful.
And then rooms advertised online, development approvals on the council level, where these suburbs belong, right? And then the population forecast as well for those LGA. So for this one, development approvals for houses, this is on a council level. So we can also see on the suburb level what are the development applications being submitted. So in here, so there are 3 icons here. So you can either click that, or down here, right? Click that. So we'll click here in Annandale. So we'll click Annandale. So this will show us all, also in the map, all the development applications that was submitted. So the DA reference number,
Wow.
the description of the DA, and the address, and when was it received by the council.
Crazy. Yeah, and that's super handy is if you're looking to understand what the development potential is in an area, it's really super useful just to look at what's been approved previously. And not saying that that's what can get approved. Obviously, you need to speak to a town planner and understand what can happen, but it gives you a bit of confidence in knowing, oh, this is a 1:3 site, or this is a 1:2 site, because this property right here is zoned exactly the same. It has the exact same parameters, square meterage wise. I can now confidently, go out there and assume that this can go ahead and do a development. But obviously, you have to then take that next step.
Exactly. And if you want to find out the status of those submitted DA, all you have to do is click the council reference number, or here on the map, more info. It will redirect you to the council website where that DA has been submitted. So here it's just been lodged, history, Yep. So you can see who lodged documents. So it seems like it's just recently submitted. Yeah. Well, it
Yeah.
was lodged
A couple of months ago.
a couple of months ago. Yeah. So it's just
Unreal.
easy when you know what's happening within that area.
One of the things is like, I don't know where to get started when it comes to data. Do you have any kind of, well, I use presets. There's a couple of presets that you've got built in that ask you right
Yep.
at the beginning on the front page.
Yeah. So we have here, so you can, so it's either when you log in, so you can use some of the strategies in here, or it's the same strategies when you go,
So what's flipping? Flipping is a, oh yeah, there you go. You got a button there for
there you go.
strategies.
So servers for flipping. So these are all, instead of starting from scratch, so these are all pre-configured filter settings that you can use. So servers for flipping. So if you're buying a property, renovating it, and then selling, definitely you want the days on market on that area need to be relatively low, so that when you finish renovating it and then you start selling it, it wouldn't take that much time to get sold, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah. You want it to be able to be resold, but then also you want to make sure that there's enough.
Yeah, so
properties.
these are the filters that was configured behind that strategy. So you have here the vacancy rate, population. Vacancy rate was configured to low because just in case you change your mind, you want to hold that property, at least the vacancy rate is low and you can have it rented right away.
Amazing.
Yeah, and then
Okay.
online,
And then you've got a minimum population.
Yep,
Yeah.
exactly. And so those are the 5 filters that we configured, and then you can see what are the configuration we implemented. So you can see here the vacancy rate was set to 3% and below. What was the other one? So the days on market. So there's a lot. The days on market here was set to below 90 days. And listing market demand was set on average and high online demand, and the population was set to 45,000. And then next is percentage owner occupiers 60% and above.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's jump to our next person who is looking for high capital growth. So these 2 people, double income, no kids. They're looking to purchase a property that is worth $700,000 and focusing purely on growth. How would we do that?
Let me just save this first. So I'm saving it now so that at least when I log in next time, I don't have to do that configuration again. So all I have to do is go to my dashboards and then load it. And then that's it.
Boom.
Right.
Boom.
Yeah. So what was the setting again? So the
700,000 purely growth. So they're looking for ultimate blue chip territory where there is indications of good capital growth.
Yeah. So again, we're back to 15,000 areas. So 700,000, let's say 750. Yeah. So we're down to 2,500 with.
I'd make that price go up, Gilbert, and make it for between so the 0. I'd make the 0.
Yeah, the 0. Yeah.
550 to 800 is probably a nice one.
Yep. Yep. So we have 1,300 areas, right? And then they're looking, well, let's put in a decent growth as well. Let's say 4% and above.
Yeah, Blacktown. I've got a property there. Keep going. Go, you good thing.
So let's say with a decent growth of between 8 to 5% historically. So let's say now you have now you have 122, right? And let's put in a vacancy rate again of 3% and below. Now you're down to 113. Now, if we want to focus on certain state, all you have to do is to go to state, unselect all, and then let's say do Queensland. Yep. So now we're looking at all the suburbs in Queensland. So there are 42 suburbs in Queensland.
Unreal. So back in WA, it's
You've got a property in expertise hands as well. I'm ticking all the boxes here today. Thanks, Gilbert.
yeah, all this is just pumping up Steve's tires for the areas that he's bought. You didn't even use the platform. He's done it old school. But it said Joondalup. Oh, it's Joondalup City. Okay. I was thinking that it had, what was the requirement? 6 to 8% growth over the past 10 years.
Yep. And if you see here, it's 13 kilometers away from Perth CBD.
Oh, okay. Well, let's get as close as we can to the CBD.
Yeah. So we can use this distance from CBD, let's say from
Joondalup, a growing area in Perth. There's a lot of industrial estates going in there at the moment. So there's a lot of brand new stock there. So that I imagine, again, we'll have a look at the data, but I imagine next 10 years there'll be quite some population growth as well.
So I put in in here 20 kilometers from CBD. Yeah. So now these are all the areas that's less than 20 kilometers away from the CBD. And we did here our budget, right?
Yep.
Yep.
There you go. Samson and Fremantle.
And then again, we can select 5 and then compare those 5 again against each other. And then the good thing here is a while ago, we selected this 5. We can we can run feasibilities on these 5 different areas we selected. So there's a button here, run feasibility. So when we click it, the median price, median rent, and average annual growth and vacancy rate will auto-populate the feasibility sheet. So select that.
Yeah, if anyone has any questions about the platform or any area that they want us to dive into, throw that in the comments there. Yeah. So what you're saying with this feasibility is there are 5 suburbs that I really, really like, and I just don't know which one to go for. Yep. I want to see in real terms what it means to buy in these areas.
Exactly.
From a cash flow perspective.
So here are the suburbs that we selected, right? And so the state, so these are the median price pulled from our latest database, and the growth, the vacancy rate, and the rent. Right? So all the non-gray areas are user editable, and also the stamp duty is automatically calculated as well. So in here, WA 27 grand. When we select Victoria,
does that include the transfer duty?
Yeah, included the registration and transfer duty as well.
And transfer, yeah. Great.
Yeah.
Is that something like some states have high transfer duties? Like South Australia has a $5,000 transfer duty on average. Well, not on average, but that you kind of get stung with that you don't realize sometimes.
Yeah. So in here, since these are all houses, we'll remove the strata. And then you can play around with the interest rate as well. So in here, it's showing you the the cash flow per annum before tax. Right? So in here, we can see that this Kingsley on WA is negatively geared by one grand per annum. Right? And you can also see here. Sorry, go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, per year. So the estimated cash flow for that suburb in Fremantle is positively geared. What interest rate have you got?
One point to note, Joe and Gilbert, is make sure you've got the council rates, water rates, and insurances right. So some of the slightly more regional kind of councils, it can be really council rate insurance.
Yeah, and definitely you can adjust.
Property management. Some of the kind of lower rent ones, you pay way more than 5.5% now. You pay 7.5% to 9.5%. Basically, once you chose those areas, just double check that data, and that will give you an accurate cash flow.
Yep, these are just been pre-filled to help you get started.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, 75%.
Yeah, and then interest rate would be, let's say 5% or 6%. Yeah,
but this is a high growth client, right? They're looking for a suburb.
This is the one that we selected in here.
Yeah. So
if
what are
you
some of
see
the
here-
indicators that we can look at to judge future capital growth?
Well, one
You're-
that
Question, Joe, far out.
one that we'll be looking at is the supply that is coming in within the area. So that's the reason why we have here the number of approved houses on the council level.
So what you want to do is go back about 12 to 18 months from where we are right now,
Yep.
and then look about what is coming on the market. So you can see here in that black one, what is it? Joondalup.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we can turn
There
on-
is about in January 2021. So that's that's 12 months, and that
Yep.
18 month, we've got quite a bit of stock coming up in the next 3 to 6 months.
Yep.
And
Yep.
then it starts to drop off a little bit, which is interesting. So
And you
something to
also need,
factor in.
and you also need to look at the total sale listings as well.
One of the interesting things there, Joe, is actually a lot of that might have come down to build prices and inflation. Because I know a lot of my buyers and clients, they sat on their hands when build prices went up. They kind of went, oh no, I'm going to wait to do that development or that granny flat or whatever it is. However, I disagree, because it doesn't mean build prices are going to go down. But that might be the reason why that kind of last 12 months there's been a drop off on some suburbs.
Yeah. And it's across the board on all the suburbs, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Okay,
So,
so
yeah.
we were talking about capital growth. So you're talking about listings.
Yep. So this one, it's so I'll be looking at the supply metrics as well. So, since we have an idea how many supplies are coming in the market within 18 to 20 months or 24 months time, then we should have a look at the currently how many stocks are in the market as well.
Yeah.
It's been going down.
Yeah, it's trending in the right direction. Like these suburbs are trending in the right direction for what you're looking to do. And what are the days on market looking like?
And it's
Again.
been going down as well.
That's so crazy. Those numbers, it's like as low as it can get. You can't really get any lower than 20 days on market, because it's got to transact. It's got to go through not pre-approval, but contracts exchange, and then so you can't really get too much lower than what we've got right there. Super interesting.
Yeah, it's
And
one of those
Sorry.
ones where people say, oh yeah, property is going to have a really quiet period, but every one of these graphs we've looked at so far, everything is getting tighter.
Yeah, but I mean, this is because we whittled it down, and this is where people get it wrong. They're like, oh, the Australian property market is going to do X. No, it's not. We had 15,000 suburbs. We've now whittled it down to 5 of the good ones. Out of those, some of them are going to go down, and out of these ones, these ones are going to go up. So it's just not fair to blanket paint a statement that's saying the property market's going to go down or up or whatever it is. You need to look within the markets and see what is actually happening from a data perspective, and then go out there.
And we've barely
Or better, if we can do a deep dive within the suburb level by overlaying different data against each other, right? So there's an icon here. With a suburb
Here's
name.
one I prepared earlier.
So we can click this, and then we
Of course
can
we can.
see. Yep, and then we can see all the reports in here. So this is the demographics data, the data census 2021. The growth report between 3-month, 12-month, 36 months change, average annual growth. But what's interesting here is I've overlaid days on market versus the median house price. So you can see the relationship between the two data. It's just easier telling a story on what's happening in that area. Right?
Yeah, that's crazy.
You've made it really tough to use, Gilbert. You click a button and it's all there for you. Far out.
Yeah. So
us buyers agents aren't going to stand a chance.
And then how are those people looking at the buy section of the online listings translate into are they really converting into sale? You can see the relationship between the days on market as well.
Is that COVID starting where everyone just had a computer and they're like,
Yeah,
oh, gosh,
that's
better look at real estate.
Yeah, September 2020, right? And then in here,
Do you want to
the
zoom in
relation-
one?
I'm sorry. In here, the relationship
Maybe
between
one more, yeah.
So in
That's good.
here, the relationship between the stock level or the for sale listings versus the median house price.
And you can see a bit of a delay. You see that spike there in November 2021. You can see that that started to peak and then prices went up, jumped up a little bit, and then it started to mellow down, and then the prices started to mellow down a little bit as well. Well, they didn't mellow down, but they've got that dip. So it's interesting to see the correlation between those two data points.
Where's
Yeah.
the median prices for units, Gilbert? Is that missing from that?
Because there are no units on this area. That's the reason why. Yeah.
Cool.
Even better.
Yeah. So in here, a vacancy rate as well, because vacancy rate is on a postcode level, right? So one postcode can have multiple suburbs. That's why we overlaid it here with the number of properties that are listed for rent. Right? So here it's telling us, although the vacancy rate is 50.53%, and there's only 2 properties that are currently listed for rent. So that's a really good, I'd say, rental market, right, on that area.
You're going to get it.
Yeah, I was going to say, Joe, that'd be powerful for trying to work out what time of year is best to put your property up for rent as well, because you can, like, say you've got, I don't know, midway through the end, February is the most in-demand time. You may decide to put the client the tenant on a 7 or 8 month lease, not a 6 month, so you don't end at Christmas, because you'll get a better rent for the next 12 months.
Yeah, spot on. Yeah, great point. I'm actually having those conversations now with a number of people where we need to get a tenant in now, but we're setting up 13 and 14 month leases so that we can skip this period, so you don't have to deal with this stuff later on.
Yep. So here you can see now the effect of that vacancy rates, because the median rent for houses in here skyrocketed. Right? So you can see here the change over the quarter. So that 4.67% is equivalent to $25. Right? So 12 months ago, it increased by $50, and pre-COVID, compared to pre-COVID 36 months ago or 3 years ago, it increased by $110.
Crazy. That's a lot. That's not nothing. It's a lot of money.
For 25%, Joe, far out.
Okay, and what else we got?
So, you have the rental yield as well. You have the rooming house data in there as well. And so you have the development application approvals as well. And you have childcare centers and schools as well. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, well, let's do the super cash flow one. So now we're 50 years old. We've got, we've got $1 million in cash. We're looking to spend $500,000 purchase price. How do we get a super high cash flow? Because that's what we want in the later stages of our portfolios, outside of course, the beautiful commercial property.
Well, super high cash flows, you can only achieve that by, doing a hybrid of residential and commercial. So when I say the hybrid, that's either you do a rooming house. In Victoria, it's called rooming house. In New South Wales, it's boarding house or co-living. Right? And then in Perth, it's called HMO. And in Queensland, it's rooming house as well. So here we have pre-configured. Sorry?
That's if you want to go really, really high yield. But some people are really conservative, and they, like Joe said, they might just have $1 million and they go, oh, it'd be nice to have $60,000 rent come in. So they might just look at areas with 6% gross yields.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously they'll get a little bit of council rates and water rates and maintenance and things like that. And that just might be a nice little set and forget. So I imagine on Suburbs Finder, you'd go through and you'd look at the areas for 900,000 to 1.1, what's yielding 6%. Or alternatively, you buy two. You break it up and you go 500,000, 500,000. I want 6% yielding suburbs, and then have a look at there. And then you can finesse it based on what risk profile you have. So you go, okay, I only want areas that have population more than 20,000 and vacancy rate 5%. So you don't have to go to commercial or the high yielding like rooming houses, blocks of apartments. You might even use this for granny flat. Part of the strategy might be buy something with a big granny flat.
Yep. So you can, for granny flat, you can use the rooming house data, because highly likely those people who are willing to rent a room will be renting a granny flat as well.
Spot on.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yep. But for this one, so we have a rooming house strategy as well. So all you have to do is on strategies, so renting out rooms individually. So what we'll do is it will show you all the areas that has highest demand for renting out rooms.
Where do you extract this info, Gilbert, from for the renting out rooms data? You can say it's IP if you want, but like where are you generally getting that data from?
Well, there's a lot of this is an aggregate of all the online listing sites that renting out rooms.
So guys,
So
like,
it's literally.
I was a young uni student, used to go on all the usual ones. You like go on some like Gumtrees and then housemate finder, roommate finder. There was quite a lot of options there.
Yep. And then those are, it's being deduped so that the duplicates are removed, so that we can come up with clean data with this one.
So it's literally people looking for rooms. You've got 700 people in this South Bank. Well, maybe that's probably not a good example.
Well, here in Gold Coast, in Miami.
Yeah.
So
739.
739 is to 4, right?
Yeah. So
and then rent per room is 293.
Wow.
So even if say you own a 5-bedroom house, you can have it rented each room, right?
Yeah, kind of. If you
but
do all the
also in New South Wales, in Victoria, let's say here in Victoria, in Moreland, or in Brunswick, 682 is to 14, but there are 13 registered rooming houses already, right? So if you click that, you'll also see, where in the map are those rooming houses, who are the operators or proprietors, and their address as well.
Wow, okay, that's really interesting.
Yeah, that's super. So, and this is again kind of like what we're doing with the GapMaps, is identifying that opportunity. Where is the opportunity? That doesn't look like an opportunity within Moreland in Brunswick to build one of those things, but Miami has zero boarding houses. So if you could create a boarding house in Miami,
or what we can do is we can narrow down. Let's say we can narrow down by, let's say, on Victoria, and then let's adjust the budget to, I'd say.
What were you going to say, Steve?
I was going to say, you still got to look at the demand for the amount of boarding houses as well, because just because there's a lot of them doesn't mean they're sitting there vacant. Like you might be right next to a university, which is always going to need, it's going to have more of them, for instance. So, like I said, it's not, you can never make blanket statements like you mentioned, Joe. You have to look at something and then work out why it's that case.
Exactly. So let's say this one in Warrnambool, right? Or here in Shepparton. You guys always talk about that. Median price is low at $425, and 28 people looking for a room versus 15, and there's already 7 rooming houses in that area. So still, there still could be an opportunity on that.
I love it. Shows you on the map as well. That's perfect.
Yeah, right near the hospital there.
Yeah. So in here, also in Wodonga, in Traralgon, in Latrobe. Yeah.
What are these? What are the filters that you've got overlaid right now? to pull up all of these?
I'll
Because,
just put in the median price. I put it on
and then
below 600, and then state in the median number of people looking for a room. Yeah.
One of the useful things you could use this for, like I used to live on the northern beaches of Sydney, and like a lot of the younger people and young professionals, especially if they travel a lot for work, they don't necessarily just want to be in a share house, for instance. So they actually look for rooms. So if you can find a suburb and you're looking to buy a house where you're stretching yourself a little bit with the mortgage, putting in a rooming person for even to summer 6 months, and like you said, you get $300, $400 a week, that can be beneficial as well. So it doesn't just have to be for investment. You can do it for PPOR as well.
Yeah, true. And we're pretty much with similar to GapMaps. So you say we've adjusted these filters. Let's say you want to do that on the coastal area, right? So all you have to do is we have a map here as well. So as you zoom in, it will filter.
Yeah, exactly. Let's say I have a $500,000 budget.
Right.
Well, maybe not 500. Let's go $700,000 budget. You can just keep zooming in and zooming in into the actual pockets of the locations around.
Yeah.
So you're
so
like,
let's
no.
say you want a
cool.
700. Let's say 700. Say 750 with a yield of, let's say, minimum of 5% and above, right?
Yeah.
So you can use the map. So as you zoom in, so it will give you all the list of those areas. Yeah, that matches your criteria. So here, there's none here in Melbourne that has a 5% and above, except for, where's this?
Travel.
Yeah. So yeah, somewhere within this area. So that's Churchill, Morwell. Where's Morwell? Morwell, and then Yellow North.
Someone said, can you click on Melton in Victoria? Explore the... that's not there.
Melton, years ago, Joe, was a really big kind of land release area where a lot of people were kind of buying off for plans and stuff like that. So I imagine they want to see how that's tracking along.
Yeah, what has that looked over the last couple of years? So what do you do? Get off the map and then just type it. Let's just say...
Yeah, let's just say I'll just go here and then I'll type in Melton. Say this one,
bottom.
right? So yeah, so these are the change the performance.
So what's happened over the last 36 months? It's grown by 30%, and over the last 3 months only 0.25, 12% over the last 2.
Yep.
Okay.
And then
days
here,
on market is super low.
I like the comparison between houses and units as well, Joe, showing that unit was about half of what the house had in capital growth.
Oh, really? Yeah. Scroll up.
This one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Literally.
Yeah.
Oh, but the 10-year average annual is 7.85. So it's actually, how does that work, Gilbert?
That's the compounding. That's the average per year on a 10-year previous 10 years.
Right. Okay. Cool.
That can have a lot to do, Joe, with like oversupply. So say 5 years ago, they built lots of like apartment buildings. That's obviously not going to have the same capital growth because there's more days on market, more supply, and then it might catch up over time, or it might not. The next 10 years, houses might pull away as well.
Yeah. Awesome point.
So I guess one of the features that I really I'd say mostly use for me, my favorite is let's say I'll just reset all, is the, let's click here, so I'll pin to the left. is the performance change filters. So here on the performance change filters, let's say I want to find out what areas has increase or decrease in price over the past 3 months, 12 months, or 36 months, right? So what I'll do here is, let's say, okay, I want to see what are the suburbs that has declined in price by 5% or even 10%. So I'll know right away there are 1,400 suburbs that has decreased in price.
I actually know some investors who use that as a strategy. So they look at areas that have kind of, like you said, lost value over 5, 10, 15%. And then they actually go in and try to find something with a bargain, but they can flip it or do something creative with it and make money that way, because they know it's going to be an area where if it's, say, drop 10% and they can get another 10% off, they potentially can be buying well. Again, assuming, like I said before, it's not a fancy ball, doesn't mean it's coming back up. But again, that's why there are 1,000 strategies with investing. Everyone's got their own little nuance of what they think can work. And a lot of them can work as well.
Yep.
Yeah. But also there's a bit of more desperation in that market, because everything is dropping. People are getting a little bit more serious about, oh gosh, if I have to sell this, I need to, drop a bit of a price down. There's a question that's popped up here, Gilbert, is would be keen, just from the one and only Jeff Miles, would be keen to know if there's any analysis on the platform and which metrics are more meaningful to predict capital growth.
Right. Each individual has their own preference metrics that they use, right? So that's the reason why I made it, do whatever you like, or use whatever metric would weigh more or would have more weight for you, right? And also on your risk assessment as well. But for me, I've looked at the number of stocks that are coming in. That would be the number of development approvals, and at the same time on the supply, and combine that. It's not here, but I just use maps or near maps or any maps out there to see how big is the developable land available within that area.
Yeah. How much is available to come to the,
and lastly, the 10-year average historical growth. Although it's not a guarantee that it will form the same, but at least we have an idea how it performed historically. Let's say it performed 8%. I would say to be conservative, I'll just use 5% of that on my feasibility.
This is exactly, Gilbert, why you need software like this to be able to predict the next 10 years, because like you said, 10 years previous capital growth doesn't mean future capital growth, because
exactly
it's had that growth because it's had the demand. Maybe it's at the top now, so the next 5-10 years is actually the slow spot, and you want to pick that up and coming area. So there's huge amounts of kind of theories in that. What are your ones, Joe? What are your big kind of key metrics that you'll look at, like holistic view, helicopter view? What are the main ones you look at?
Well, yeah, kind of what Gilbert is talking about. What is the supply? This is why I was so interested with GapMaps about what is coming to the market and what the population forecast. And the problem with forecast is just a kind of a guesstimation, but it's a guesstimation around where the council is going to put hundreds of thousands of people. So for me, it's the supply of where are humans going, and what is the demand of where humans are going, and the supply of what is the available stock on there. So you can then see how many houses are going to be built in this area. Well, there's no more land available, so they're going to have to start doing those higher densities. And then in that, you'll start to see zones. So in South Australia, for instance, they have general neighborhood, which is just the normal everyday housing. And then they've got something called HDN, which is housing diversity neighborhood. And that allows you to put 3 properties on a site. So I'm starting to weave my way into the areas where council is saying, yep, we want to put those people here. So yeah, for me, it's literally supply and demand. Where are the people going, and where's the supply coming from on there? From a commercial perspective, how does it kind of work for for you looking at that? Like, do you use a lot of the same residential data, and what does it look like, and what are the differences?
It is. So this is hard with commercial, and they normally happen at different times because you can't have new housing developments and growing population without having the commercial there already. Because guess what you need to build houses? You need warehouses. Then guess what you need to service that population that's going there? You need retail. So you need the hairdressers and medical centers and dentists and that. And then it's a chicken or egg kind of scenario. So they normally have to put in the commercial, and then the kind of housing will come from after that. So a lot of areas I buy, I know, like I'm buying their residential. So like, I'll tell you. So Townsville, I actually think there's some good opportunities for residential, but because they've oversupplied the commercial market, like a vacancy rate on an industrial property is like 1 to 3 years, but the vacancy rate on a residential property is like 0.2 to 0.6%. So two completely different facets. I'm using the residential data to make my decision positive or negative for the commercial data. And then, like you said, it's supply and demand. Same thing for commercial, but you marry that up with the residential data as well.
Yeah. And also you've got to look at it from the short-term data, which is going to be the next, 6 to 12 months, and then the medium term, which is going to be the next 12 months to 3 years, and then the large macro, which is going to be the longer term, which is like those infrastructure projects or what are coming in. And then the short term is this platform, right? It is days on markets, listing supplies coming on the market. What has been the growth? Has it already gone to a point? Like for me, I go to a suburb and I set before I even get there, this is my walk away number. Once houses start to get to this point, I don't see value at this point anymore. And then it goes above. I'm still trying to find deals below it. Not very many. Cool. We're moving on now because that price has moved beyond where there is value for that place.
Yeah, you can use the data as well to make a decision on what type of residential you buy as well. Because if I think an area is going to absolutely boom, and then the difference between buying a 600 square meter lot for 600,000 or a 1,300 square meter lot for say 720,000, I might roll the dice on that one, going, this is going to be very powerful in 10 years' time for a subdivision, and you might you'll lose a bit of your cash flow, but if you're at the end of your serviceability limit and you that extra budget's not going to get you into the next property, you might roll the dice on that one for that certain client.
Yeah. That's a great way to put it. That's awesome, Gilbert. If anyone has any questions or wants to explore anything on the platform, feel free to throw that in the comments. But we were chatting about a little treat for Oz Property Investors people, but I didn't confirm if you were able to do that in time. So I don't know if you've got a code for them.
Yeah, I'll give it. Yeah, I do. I'll give it to you so you can publish it.
Oh, it's a published one. Okay.
No, I'll give it to you so you'll be the one to post it on the group. Yeah.
On the group. Yes. Yeah. Do that. This has been an unreal software showcase. This is the first time we ever did it. Do people like this? Is this something we should do more often? I think it's completely different to what we normally do. And Gilbert, I think I've known you for a year or two now. We caught up, had beers. Unreal platform. Anyone that is looking at investing, the pricing, I tell Gilbert all the time, is way too low. For you're going to buy one of the largest assets of your life, and it's a couple of $100. So if you're looking at investing, jump on it. Don't even use the discount code. Just you're fine. You'll be all right. But it helps. Like what I say is, it sets you up. It's the barometer of where do I actually need to go. And it's so amazing how you can cut it down so fine. I only have $500,000. Don't look at a 600. Don't look at a 300. Narrow the focus, narrow the scope.
But of course, if they don't have time and data combined with local knowledge, that's where you guys come in, right? That's your expertise. Plus, the relationship with agents and all.
Yeah, definitely. Like this only gets you to identify where those hot spots are from a data perspective. But there was a location that I was looking at in Victoria. I did all the data and I was like, this place is amazing. Now I'm going to go to the location. I went there and I didn't see what the data was telling me. And I said, no, I've got to, unfortunately, spend all these hours researching it, but I know it can help you. You do need to go to that next level though and fly to that property, fly to that location.
And the reality is there's no perfect data, right? In reality is that no matter how much effort we exert to make it close to perfect, it's not going to be perfect, and it's always going to lag.
That's a great point as well.
I get that similarly for like commercial, Joe. So like we might look at, say, like a retail strip, and all the properties might be tenanted, and they've all been tenanted 5 years. On paper, that looks fantastic. You're like, oh, this is brilliant. They're all tenanted. They're none vacant. You actually go there. Some retail centers you go to, like the little suburban retail strips, and they're a bit of a ghost town. There's just no one there. There's like those owners just sitting there on their phone, faffing about. And then other ones you go to and they're absolutely buzzing. The cafes overflowing, things like that. Which one are you more likely to get rental increases on? The buzzing one. So the data only takes you so far, but at least gets to the point where it's worth inspecting the property.
Yep. Or you can use the data to validate, whatever somewhat like a professional or a BA is telling you, right?
No, Gilbert, BAs don't lie to anyone. Don't do it.
No, I mean just to validate, at least education is still important. Right?
The biggest thing I took away from today is just how many data metrics there are and how little people know about it. Like you can extrapolate as much as you want. It's not as simple as buy and make money. Like there is so many metrics and then so many strategies to take off with that metrics as well. Like I've got a completely different opinion to you, Gilbert. Like I actually don't care what the last 10 years of property growth has been, because for me, that doesn't help me at all. I've missed that. I've got to focus on the next 10 years. So, and it's just how you use that data, but you need that data to begin with.
Yeah. Love that. Okay. So how do people learn more, Gilbert? And how do they get access to this thing? What is it? A link? Is it a discount on the price? What are you giving us?
It's a surprise. I'll just send it to you, but they can just go directly to suburbsfinder.com.au. Yeah.
Suburbsfinder.com.au. Jeff, you're on the computer. You can chuck that in there for us. Be a gentleman. Amazing. Okay, well, jump on there. Steve, thank you very much for being co-host on this session, mate. It's been unreal. If anyone wants to have a chat with anybody about commercial property, reach out to Steve Polisi at Polisi Property, because he is your guy.
50% discount in December. Give 50% sign-ups, guys. Jump on it.
50% off your retainer fee to get people.
Get
Lord.
In the gear before Christmas so we can plan for in January for the next year.
That's a lot of money. Like,
you are not letting you have that, all right?
Yeah, man. Okay. But that's okay. Yeah. So it's 50% discount off the retainer fee. That's thousands of dollars, isn't it?
Yeah.
Happy days. Well, if you need a commercial property now more than ever, Merry Christmas. I don't have any special offers on mine, unfortunately. I actually can't take any more people, so please do not come to me.
You're doing 100% off your retainer fee for December.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. The promo code is please don't call me. I can't serve you. Love it. Awesome platform. Thank you very much, Gilbert. Everyone reach out to Gilbert if you have any questions about that, but use the data and let's go out there and buy a property. Thank you very much, guys. See you later.
Thanks, Joe.
Cheers, Gilbert.